This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Presented by GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and before I get started today, I'm going to take the time out to remind you, as always, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top when we drop our latest stuff. Also, if you could please as well, give us a 5-star rating. Our nice of you would be very appreciated, very helpful. That's what you guys like, what you guys dislike, the ways we can improve, all that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk. We can chat, we can debate, and we can discuss. Before I get started today, I want to just say that I hope everybody had a very nice and healthy and relatively safe Thanksgiving. Obviously, can't really say what you guys did or didn't do, but hopefully, like I said, everybody was safe, everybody was mindful, and like I said, hopefully everybody comes out of this healthy and everything. We're going to see what it looks like the next couple of weeks. But like I said, hopefully for all of you listening out there, you do what you have to do to make sure that you were as safe as you could be this Thanksgiving. So now we, like I said, we got a lot of football to discuss, and we'll start with the Sunday night game. And obviously, as is the old adage, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. The Eagles are going to try to test that theory out on Monday night after you guys will be hearing this, because they're supposedly going to give Jalen Hurts more reps with Carson Wentz not on the field. So they're going to try a weird two-quarterback system, because it doesn't sound like he's going to get full series, just like plays sprinkled in more often, just like with him off the field. So like, hey, you could actually throw the ball to people. So that's going to be a mess. It is what it is. Again, they're right in top 5, top 6 pick range, so you're going to need them to lose a majority of their games, because Micah Parsons or Jamar Chase would look good in midnight green. But that's just me. But yeah, so like I said, the Bears, They were like, oh, like, let's go start with Mitch, but then, like, he's kind of bad, so let's go to Nick Foles. And then he's, like, also not great, so let's go back to Mitch. And it went about as well as you could have expected, and that was terrible. Granted, the Packers played well, especially the offensive line. I don't think, let alone sacked, I don't think Aaron Rodgers got hit outside of, like, 2 runs that he had that ended up going past the line of scrimmage. Like, that was really the extent of him getting touched back there in the backfield when he was dropping back, which, I mean, that'll lose you a lot of games. Or on the flip side, if you're an offense, that'll win you a lot of games if you can do that. So, as a shout out to the Packers and their offensive line for handling that, though. Obviously, Akeem Hicks wasn't there, so that definitely messes things up along the defensive line. That obviously messed some things up when they were running the ball, because they ran for 182 yards. Both Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones ran for over 4 yards a carry. Like I said, the middle of that line, was just getting blocked up. That they were, like, some of the runs that they mentioned on the broadcast, some of the runs they probably would have taken out of the playbook or out of the game plan with Akeem Hicks in there, they can now call, and clearly they're working to success. And then obviously Aaron Rodgers did what Aaron Rodgers continues to do, and that is play very well and very efficient. Another 4-touchdown day, only 211 yards. Again, they didn't really need him to do a whole lot, because their defense was actually good. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's probably him and Mahomes for the MVP right now, you'd have to say. Oh, again, you could probably throw Derrick Henry in there too. We'll talk about him in the next segment. But yeah, it's probably just those 3 right now. I said, like, Kyle's taking steps back. Josh Allen's taking steps back. Tom Brady, obviously. Russ, again, we'll see what Russ does on Monday, but I know he's taking a couple steps back the last couple weeks. So like I said, it's probably those 2, and then like I said, Derrick Henry you could throw in there if you wanted to go the non-quarterback route. Like I said, Aaron Rodgers continues to play well. Devontae Adams had another touchdown. He spread the ball around a little bit today. Robert Tonyan had a touchdown. Lazard had a touchdown. Mercedes Lewis had a touchdown. And the defense actually played pretty well for once. I don't want to say for once, but actually played pretty well this week. Had 3 sacks, 2 interceptions. Also recovered a fumble on Mitch. Preston Smith had himself a good day. He's been kind of lackluster this year. But had himself a sack, had himself tackled for loss, had 2 quarterback hits, and I think he scored the defensive touchdown on the fumble, if I remember correctly. He had Darnell Savage, got the 2 picks. So, like I said, the defense showed up. They did what they had to do. And then, like I said, even though the final score is less indicative of a dominant performance, because they only won by 16 technically, like, the game was never really all that close. They were up 41-10 heading into the 4th. It is what it is. Like I said, they really got out of hand in the second because it was kind of close. The Packers were only up 6-3 heading into the second quarter. Then they scored 3 touchdowns in that quarter, and by the end of the half, they were up 27-10. Like I said, and heading into the 4th, they were up 41-10. The Packers defense the Packers offense couldn't really do a lot, and then the Bears. The Bears offense couldn't really do a whole lot, and then their defense had trouble stopping them. Plus, again, they were in bad situations because of the turnovers in field position and things like that. Like, it's one of those games where, like, again, you now know that the problems are bigger than just the quarterback. Because, again, no matter who's been in there, they've been terrible. Granted, you could argue both the quarterbacks aren't that good. But, again, they probably need to clean house, especially in the same weekend where Mahomes played well on Sunday, obviously. Deshaun Watson had a great Thanksgiving Day. So, it's just one of those situations where it's not really a good weekend for the Bears in terms of quarterback luck. So, like I said, it's hard to think that Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy will be here next year to decide who the quarterback is. But again, you never know. Though we are already starting to see some people lose their jobs. So we will get into that a little bit as well later on. But like I said, shout out to the Packers. They got the dub. Also, shout out to the Niners because they got a big win for them. Again, doesn't really matter a whole lot because they are 5-6 or so, like in last place in the division. But, like I said, in case you want to maybe put together a nice little run here and the season on a high note, this was a good start. Like I said, divisional opponent, the Rams, as we talked about, we still don't really know. I think I said, still go maybe Saints, but you could argue Packers potentially. But again, it's hard to say. Well, we still don't know who the best team in the NFC is. Like I said, people thought it was going to be the Rams, or it could potentially be the Rams because of that defense. And then they go out there and do this. So it's a situation where it's kind of hard for you to say for certain that they are this great team. Like, you can't go out there, say you're some great team, say you're a potential Super Bowl contender, and then find a way to lose to Nick Mullins. Like, that can't happen. Especially when Nick Mullins didn't even play that well. It's like, it'd be one thing if, like, Nick Mullins just randomly lit you up or whatever. Like, Nick Mullins had no touchdowns, was sacked twice, threw an interception. Did he fumble? No, he didn't fumble. Some of the other players fumbled. Mostert and Jeff Wilson both lost fumbles in this game. But like I said, the Niners turned the ball over 3 times. Like, again, if it wasn't like some flawless offensive performance from the Niners. But like I said, when the Rams and Jared Goff is in his situation where he is also turning the ball over, which Sean McVay did touch on after the game, that's going to be a problem. Like I said, Jared Goff was not good. Now, in fairness to him, the Niners defense is getting a little bit healthier. Richard Sherman was back. Some other guys, like I said, are coming back. Nick Bosa and some of the other guys aren't. But like I said, some of the guys are coming back to get a little healthier. Things of that nature. But still, Jared Goff's not supposed to play this bad. Like I said, he got sacked twice, threw 2 interceptions, had a 52 quarterback rating. He lost a fumble. So like I said, it wasn't exactly his best performance. Malcolm Brown also lost a fumble as well. So like I said, it wasn't his best performance, especially coming off of last week where he looked a lot better. In that game, though, in fairness, he did try to trick it off there at the end, but the Rams held on. Like I said, this time they couldn't overcome, like I said, his mistakes and like I said, some of the mistakes of others, and they unfortunately lost at the very end on a field goal where Nick Mullins was able to do enough to get them in position to get them down there, like I said, to kick the game-winning field goal as time expired. I mean, it was mainly they were running the ball and stuff. But still, he had to make a couple passes, got to do a couple things there on the drive, and he was able to do that. And they had the big one to Debo for 24 that really got them in position to potentially have this drive. Like I said, they started back at their own 20. So at that point, you were uncertain if that was going to happen. But then, like I said, the Debo pass got it going. And then, it was from there, we could actually win this game and not go to overtime. So that's a shout out to the Niners. And that's a tough blow for the Rams because now, if the Seahawks win, they're already in first place, but now they'll be a game clear first place. They'll be 8-3, which they should because the Eagles stink. And like I said, the Rams will be 7-4, and now the Cardinals will be 6-5 because they lost to the Patriots as well, which is definitely a tough loss for them. And when you're competing in that division, you're competing for a playoff spot. That's not really a game you should lose, even though again it's in Foxborough. And it's the easiest opponent the easiest place to win. But Kyler did not have himself a good game. 23-34, no touchdowns, one pick, got sacked a couple times. Like I said, it was not his normal stuff. Didn't really run the ball that effectively. Hopkins didn't really do a whole lot. And it's not even like Cam did that much. He threw for under 100 yards, threw 2 picks throughout the game. It looked like, it may be time for him to be a family man after the season's done. But, again, when he needed to, made enough plays. I think ran for a nice little, ran for a third down or a first down on the field goal drive, if I remember correctly. He had 14 yards, and obviously they got the unnecessary roughness on Isaiah Simmons, which was a tough one because he maybe hit him with his helmet, but he also was in bounds. So again, Cam's a guy that hasn't really gotten a lucky whistle when it comes to hits and things like that. So you cut him some slack there. You give him a call for once, but that was definitely a tough one to get because obviously that he got pushed out of bounds at New England 46, but now because of the penalty, they were at the Arizona 39, so they didn't really have to go that far to get in position for the game-winning field goal. So. Like I said, they only gained 7 yards from where the ball was spotted after the penalty to where they kicked the field goal from. And obviously Nick Folk is a solid field goal kicker, so he was able to make a 50-yarder. But still, like I said, that one hurt. But I said throughout the game, the Cardinals really weren't able to do a whole lot. They were down 10-7 at half, including turning the ball over on downs to end the half. They tried to run up the middle with Kenyon Drake because the last play of the half really doesn't matter if you run or pass. But they got stuffed, so that kind of hurt because, like I said, you're trying to go in the half up because when you get the ball back, okay, you could do a little double up. But like I said, the Cardinals weren't able to do that. Then, like I said, the offense in the second half wasn't able to get a whole lot done outside of the. Wasn't really able to get a whole lot done. Yeah, because they had 10 points going into the half. I'll take it back. They were already up. Excuse me, they were up 10-7 at the half, not down 10-7. They were up 10-7, so they were trying to go up 17-7 and then potentially make it 24-7 if they were able to get some things going. Like I said, they scored once in the second half on a 16-play drive to start the fourth on a Kenyon Drake run. Then they got a pick. And so you're like, okay, maybe they could do it. But then Zane Gonzalez missed a field goal, 45-yard. And then, like I said, the Patriots were able to drive down and kick a field goal of their own. So that one stung for the Cardinals, like I said, with the Rams losing later on. That was a chance to maybe potentially get a game up on them. But yeah, like I said, that one stings a little bit. Also in the NFC side, you have the South. The Broncos game, we'll go into a little bit more detail about that later and all the COVID situations happening around the league between that and also the Ravens game maybe or maybe not happening on Tuesday. We'll see what happens with there. But again, you had the Saints-Broncos. That game was a mess. You had two guys that aren't really NFL quarterbacks playing NFL quarterback. And like I said, the Broncos guy, people were they didn't even know who he was before the game because of the COVID situations, social distancing stuff. Some people in the organization didn't even know he existed, which again tells you kind of what kind of dire situation they were in at the quarterback position. And on the other side, Taysom Hill, he really did not look that good. And if they were playing a better team, they probably maybe lose, or at least it's a little bit more competitive. But because they were playing a team without really in the quarterback, it didn't really matter. Like I said, he really didn't do a whole lot. Only threw for 78 yards with an interception, but Latavius Murray had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Taysom Hill also ran for 2 touchdowns. Like I said, they were able to do that, and then the defense did what they had to do. Had a sack, had, like I said, a couple interceptions. Like I said, they just really didn't. They weren't really able to move the ball. The Broncos were, so I think they recovered a fumble too. So like I said, they did what they had to do. So they got that dub, and also it was big because the Bucs. Actually, we'll talk about the Bucs the next time because I want to talk about Patrick Mahomes a little bit there. So like I said, we'll just end it with the NFC East, because obviously I know they stink, but somebody's got to win the division. And it was looking like maybe it could be the Giants, because they looked halfway decent against the Bengals again and got a little bit close for comfort there at the end. Probably shouldn't be that close with Brandon Allen. But the biggest news coming out of that game was the fact that Daniel Jones hurt his hamstring. So that'll be kind of something to pay attention to over the next few days, because obviously he's going to get an MRI on Monday. And Joe Judge didn't say that he sounded all that optimistic about what was going on. So that'll be a big deal, because now they'll be with their backup quarterback and Colt McCoy, who didn't look that great in the time he was in there. So again, that's not really an ideal situation for them. Plus their schedule down stretch isn't really that easy. They got the Seahawks, they got the Cardinals, they got the Broncos. I mean, they got the Browns, and then they got the Ravens, the next 4 games. So they could lose those games with Daniel Jones, and now you got Colt McCoy in there. Not exactly ideal. But again, they got the big dub, which was, so now they're in first in the NFC East. So shout out to them for at least for the day, assuming the Eagles don't win tomorrow, today when you guys are hearing this, but on Monday night, which, I mean, they won't. But, maybe they do. And then, like I said, now that all that's for naught, but like I said, I doubt that happens. But we shall see. And then obviously we gotta go back to Thanksgiving. The football team, Washington, they smoked the Cowboys. Antonio Gibson had himself a nice little Thanksgiving day. And like I said, they're now 4-7 as well. So they are in second, I believe, in the division. If I remember correctly, yeah, they're now in second. So like I said, someone's got to win the division, and as long as it's not the Eagles, I'll be happy. Like I said, the Giants are in first now, and they're tied with Washington at 4-7, which is again kind of crazy. We're in week 12, we're about to be week 13, and a team with 4 wins leading a division. But that's where we are in the NFC East in 2020. But like I said, got a nice little race between Giants and Washington so far. We'll see kind of what happens here. The Washington's kind of trending up, so are the Giants. But like I said, if Daniel Jones is hurt, we really won't know what will happen there with that. Because again, I don't really know how good Colt McCoy is going to be for them. But we shall see when, like I said, we'll get news on that through, I guess Monday or Tuesday, just the full extent of that, how much time he's going to miss, like if he's going to be on IR, things like that. Because like I said, they're going to have a hard time beating the teams on their schedule without him. But now if they got to face the Seahawks, the Cardinals, the Browns, the Ravens potentially without him, yeah, it might be Washington's division to lose at this point. Because at least they're playing kind of decent. Like, you would think it'd be the Eagles, but they're playing terrible. So, I have to support this week that Doug wouldn't care if he was going to get fired. So, that tells me that everyone's just kind of hoping to get out of this situation. So, again, we'll see how that happens. But yeah, like I said, interesting on the NFC side. So now we'll flip the AFC side of things. We got some, like I said, great performances, some interesting games, some interesting outcomes, things like that. So, we will discuss those after the break. Stay right there.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast. So, should we start with Mahomes or should we start with Derrick Henry? Yeah, you know what? Let's just start with Mahomes. So obviously the Chiefs played the Bucks today. Kind of sort of big game for the Bucks because, again, they need to try to keep pace with the Saints in their division. After getting swept by them, they kind of can't afford too many more losses, especially coming off the Rams loss. But here they are. Catching that L once again, they now dropped to 7-5, And they are, I'm trying to think, well, luckily for them, like the Cardinals and like some of the Rams, like the other teams around them lost. But like I said, they're basically all but done in the division. They're more or less like 3.5 games back because Saints hold a tiebreaker. And they're 3 games up. Well, 2.5 games up. They're 3 up in the loss column, 2 up in the win column. The Bucs have their bye this upcoming week, a very late bye, week 13 bye. But still, like I said, they're losing ground in the division. And then in the conference, they are still currently, well, again, they would be the 6th seed right now, so they'd be playing the Seahawks, which, I mean, hey, look, they could beat the Seahawks. Like, I don't know if the Seahawks are good or not. Like I said, they're the 6th seed, and that's, again, Tom Brady's never gone through the wild card, he's never gone through the wild card round as a wild card team. Like, again, he's played in the wild card round, but normally he's been at home. Now you have to win potentially 3 road games in order to get to Super Bowl. Seems like a tough ask, especially when, again, you see him. He had a little bit more success throwing the ball down the field in this game, but like still in general, like the downfield passing, still more misses than hits. He threw 2 more interceptions today. Threw 2 touchdowns, a couple of them towards the end to get it, like again, to get the game relatively close. But all in all, this game was like basically, you could say it was basically won in the first quarter when the Chiefs went out to a quick 17-0 lead, scored, like I said, 2 touchdowns, 2 long passes to Tyreek Hill. I think he had like 200 yards in the first quarter. Ended up with 269 and 3 touchdowns on the game overall, but I said 200 yards in the first quarter. Like, you're not going to win too many games when that kind of thing happens to you. Like, the Bucs did eventually get the offense going, but it was almost a little too late, you could argue. Like I said, they didn't score the 2 touchdowns until the fourth quarter. So, again, they got it close. But with the Chiefs jumping out to such a big lead early on, it was always going to be tough to come back. Mahomes had himself another great day, threw for over 450, 3 touchdowns. Still doing his thing, still doing what he had to do. And even like at the end, where he needed a drive there to basically ice the game after the Bucs scored to cut it to 3, they would do that because that's just what the Chiefs do. Went on an 8-play drive and like wrote out the last 4:10 of the game because I mean that's just what they do. Had a couple, like I said, had a couple second downs. He was able to scramble for a first down on 2nd and 3. Then on 2nd and 6, he was able to scramble for 8. And then he was able to hit Tyreek Hill on a 3rd and 7. That basically, I mean, that it was kind of already over at that point, but that definitely officially sealed the game. Like I said, you knew it was like Mahomes not gonna give the ball back to the Bucs. That's what it is. Like I said, give the Bucs defense credit for tightening up later on in the game and doing what they had to do. Like I said, had Tom Brady not thrown 2 second-half interceptions, maybe things go a little bit differently. Because like I said, after their last touchdown score, which was with 7 minutes left in the third, the Chiefs didn't score after that. Granted, like I said, they built up a big enough lead where it didn't matter. They were up 27-10 at the time. And then, like I said, the next drive, the Tom Brady threw his first interception. And so, like I said, it was a rough one. But still, like I said, the Bucs defense definitely tightened up there in the second half. So, like I said, credit to them for doing what they had to do. Like I said, pretty much cutting down the Chiefs. Like they held them to 3 punts before, like I said, the end of game drive. So had the Bucs not turned the ball over a couple times, maybe things go a little bit differently. But also you could say maybe the Chiefs would have kept their foot on the gas a little bit more, things like that. But like I said, it was a tough one. So like I said, that's a tough loss, and it's just another thing where like they lose to another good team. Like I said, you could look through all, and now including the Bears, who aren't a good team, look through their losses, and they're all to like good teams. They lost to the Saints twice, they lost to the Rams, they lost to the Chiefs. Now, I said they smoked the Packers, which is good, which is big. They beat the Raiders, which is not as impressive because they just lost to the Falcons, got smoked bad. They beat the Giants, but barely. Like I said, if Daniel Jones could have hit a deep pass in that game, they maybe lose that game as well. Like that was not a very good showing for the Bucs. But again, they were still dealing with injuries at that time, and now they're getting healthier and things like that, and they're not as good. So that's not a good thing. They play the Vikings next week, who were feeling themselves a little bit. I think they've won like 4 in a row now. After they were able to get a comeback win against the Panthers, even though, like I said, they did their best to try to throw the game away where Jeremy Chin scored back-to-back defensive touchdowns on, like, literally consecutive plays. Kind of wild. Well, not consecutive. Well, consecutive defensive plays. He scored a touchdown, then, like, how they kicked off, and the next play, he got another 2 fumble recoveries in a row. So, it was kind of wild that the Panthers lost that game, but hey, they did. So, like I said, take that back. I lost to the Cowboys last week. I forgot about that. So, they've won 4 out of the last 5. That's what it is. They've won 4 out of the last 5, beating the Packers, Lions, Bears, and now the Panthers. And then they play the Jags. Okay, so this is the Bucs. This is their first game after their bye is against the Vikings. So not next week, but in 2 weeks. But yeah, like I said, they finish out the season with the Vikings. For the Vikings, the Falcons, the Lions, and the Falcons again. Like I said, the Falcons, you really don't know which team's going to show up, and they've been playing better since Raheem Morris took over. So there is that. The Lions are the Lions. And like I said, the Vikings are at least feeling themselves a little bit more. Like I said, they could be in the thick of things for a potential wild card spot by the time that Bucs game plays. So that could be important for both sides. So hopefully they take this bye to get some things right, get some things figured out on the offensive side of the ball, figure out why Tom Brady keeps turning the ball over so much. Some of those things. Like I said, you got to work on some things. Like I said, the Chiefs side is what it is. Like I said, even when they don't even play that well for an entirety of a game, they're still too much. Like I said, they get out to just such a hot start that it takes a while to even begin to catch up on them. And like I said, just one of those things where it could happen literally any week. Like, you don't know. Like I said, this week it was Tyreek Hill. Last week it was Travis Kelce. Like, next week it could be maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a good day, or like I said, or Kelce and Hill both have good days, kind of like they did last week. You just don't know who's going to be the guy. Like I said, you can't really defend that because, again, if you double team, Chiefs have too many ways to beat you, which is, again, why they're the best team in the NFL as we speak currently. So, shout out to the Chiefs, shout out to Patrick Mahomes for doing what they do. Also, shout out to Derrick Henry because he's trying to do what he does, and that's put the team on his back. He, like I said, did his best job to do that. Had 178, 3 touchdowns in this game against the Colts. And again, this was a game the Titans needed after, again, kind of getting dominated by the Colts in the last game. That was for the AFC South crown for at least through 11 games. But still, like I said, it was a big win. They needed to get, and they were able to get it. So now the Titans are 8-3. They got their nice little lead on the division right now. With, like I said, 5 games to play. So still a lot of time. They still got to play the Browns. They still got to play the Packers. Still play the Texans, who again have Deshaun Watson at the very least. So that makes them not an easy team. And even the Jaguars aren't like getting smoked by people, even with like Mike Glennon or Lutton or wherever the quarterback is right now. And well, I was Glennon in this game, but you get the point. Like I said, they flip quarterbacks and they still been competitive, which is impressive. Like I said, for a team that doesn't really have the talent that some of these other teams have, they're still playing hard. And so that's impressive. But again, that doesn't really matter when you have Derrick Henry on your team. Like I said, 27 carries, 178 yards, 3 touchdowns. A.J. Brown had a long touchdown again this game, 69 yards. Also had a kick return, touchdown on the onside kick. That definitely iced the game. Like, they were already up 12 at the time, but still that officially sealed it. Tannehill was his normal efficient self, 13-22, 200 yards. With 200 yards plus through the air, a touchdown, also had a rushing touchdown there. The defense played well. Was able to pick off Phillip once. I don't want to say well, but they played good enough. Like I said, they were able to pick off Phillip once, sacked him once, also sacked Brissett one time. Like I said, did what they had to do. Didn't really allow themselves to be dominated like they were in the last game. Didn't allow Nyheim Hines to have a breakout performance against them. Things like that. Like, they were able to, like I said, tone it down a little bit, and thus the Titans were able to, like I said, when Derrick Henry runs for like 3 touchdowns in the first half, you're probably going to win most of those games. And like I said, this was the case here. So, Titans, big win, a much needed win. And, like I said, once it was 35-14 at half, like, you knew that probably was what it was for the game. And then again, the Colts could have potentially came back, but it's going to be too difficult. That 21 points and a half is a lot to make up in the NFL, but still not impossible. But like I said, just this week, the Colts weren't able to do it. So like I said, Titans, shout out to them for getting a big win. Also shout out to the Bills for getting a nice win, keeping their lead in the AFC East. You know, like I said, they were going up against a Chargers team and a Chargers quarterback, Justin Herbert, who had been playing very well up until this point. But again, the defense is starting to round into shape a little bit, you could say, and they needed this win because the Dolphins are playing the Jets. And like I said, you don't want to lose. And now you're tied with the Dolphins in the division. So like I said, that was a big one, especially since do they have another game? No, they don't have. They have a game coming up week 17, but also the Bills still got to play. They still got to play the Patriots. They got to play the Steelers. They got to play the Niners. So like I said, they still got some competitive teams. Obviously, the Steelers and the Dolphins are the best teams. Like I said, the Patriots took them down to the wire. The Niners are like weird and like playing better recently, so you never really know about that one. Plus, on the road. Monday Night Football next week. Interesting. But yeah, like I said, the Bills did what they had to do, even though Josh Allen tried to give the game away. Which is, again, why the Josh Allen still worries me a little bit if I were a Bills fan. Granted, they love him, so it is what it is. But if I were a Bills fan, Josh Allen and his decision-making would still scare me. And like I said, that's what concerns me moving forward, is that, like, sometimes he's still, even when he's playing well, sometimes he still does things you're like, why would you do that, Josh? Like, why? Like I said, you look at the second half. They're up 24-14. Then, this is the Singletary fumble. Then, Josh Allen, I think it was, he lost a snap. So then, like, harder to cover the ball. They weren't able to do a whole lot. So like I said, they had to punt the ball back. Then the next drive, Josh Allen throws an interception. Luckily for him, Justin Herbert decided to throw an interception back to Josh Allen. And then they were able to get a field goal after that. And then the Chargers had the worst end-of-game drive I've ever seen in my life. Or at least the end-of-game sequence in my life. We'll get that in a second. Like I said, the couple turnovers there in the second half are just like, and the interception was like, what are you, like, there was no reason for that throw. Like the fumble, all right, you fumbled a snap. Like, again, not good. You should get the snap. That's like the first thing you do as a quarterback. But still, like, again, those mistakes, not to say they can happen, but that's not like a mental mistake. Like, oh, I threw in a triple coverage. That's like, what are you doing kind of mistake. It's a bad mistake. You shouldn't fumble the snap. But like, again, that's not like a poor decision-making mistake. Like the interception was, if I remember correctly, was a poor decision-making mistake. And in a situation where you don't have to do that. You don't have to force the ball. You don't have to try to be a hero when you're up 7 late in the fourth quarter of a game. Like, that just isn't a necessary thing to do. Like I said, luckily for you, the defense stepped up. And I think it was Trey White got an interception. Yeah, it was Trey White got the interception. So like I said, they stepped up and did what they had to do to get the ball back. But like I said, that's a situation where a better team, a better quarterback, not that Herbert's bad, but you get the point, like a better team, they take advantage of those mistakes. So like I said, when you play those better teams in the Steelers, or maybe even the Dolphins last game of the year, or like in the playoffs, you can't afford to be making these mistakes. And like I said, that's kind of, that Josh Allen is still in there. Like, this is the better Josh Allen this year. You can't argue that. Like, he's definitely been improved this year. But still, those Josh Allen plays are still there. And like I said, that's the problem. Like, they're winning. They're playing better. And like I said, the turnovers, like I said, they're still there. The interceptions, not that bad. It's only 8 this year, which, no, I take that back. He only had 9 last year. So, he's probably going to pass that. The fumbles, he's already lost 3 when he lost 2 last year. Again, he fumbled more often in his rookie and his sophomore year. But, like I said, this year he's lost more than he's ever lost. So, like I said, the turnovers are still there. They're just not as bad. And then, obviously, he's playing better, like throwing more touchdowns, things like that. So, that's good. And the rushing, while not great, or not as good, the passing, like I said, the passing is better, so that's what you like to see. But like I said, the turnover is still there, the poor decision-making is still there, so that's kind of what would worry you if you were a Bills fan about the long-term future. So like I said, getting back to this end-of-game sequence, Anthony Lynn trying to get himself fired. I don't know that for a fact. I would imagine he likes being in Los Angeles, but he's trying to get himself fired. Like I said, so late in the game, on top of the fact they've blown 2 timeouts, one on, like, I think it was before a Bills field goal, and like one like to before a 4th and 2 play, just like for the fun of it. So now, they blew their last time out with 3:31 left after a short pass that Stephon does. Again, you didn't want to let the clock run out to get that, but there's 3:30 left in the game, and you got no timeouts left. So then, last drive, they're trying some things. They were eventually able to get a nice little Hail Mary down the field on 4th and 17. Well, 4th and 27, excuse me, because they got offensive pass interference after they got the first Hail Mary. So again, the fact they got back-to-back Hail Marys, kind of wild. But they got the Hail Mary, so all right, cool. They got to run up there. You would think spike it. His first and goal, you got to spike it. No, that's not what they did. they decide that they're going to run the ball up the middle with Austin Eckler with 24 seconds left, mind you, and no timeouts. So now they got to get down, probably spike it. They don't. Like, Justin Herbert throws a pass. Mike Williams has no idea what's going on. Shocking, I know. But then they get called for roughing the passer, so now it's first and goal from the 1. And they throw a short pass, and then they go second and goal from the 1. And Justin Herbert looks like he tries to quarterback sneak it, but like also the entire offensive line is pass blocking, so they don't know the play. He doesn't clearly know what's going on. Like I said, it was that end of the game was a big mess. And you know what could have avoided that? Having a timeout. Because you didn't call one unnecessarily. That's all I'm saying. So like I said, that sequence is bad on top of like all the other things that the Chargers have done this year to lose games. Like Anthony Lynn is all but like his papers have all but been signed. There's kind of just got to decide like, no, do we fire him this week or next week or do we wait till the season? Who knows? Like I said, you got to wonder if he's the coach to maximize what may be the best rookie quarterback we've ever seen. Like, I don't know if he's the guy. Like I said, with his game management, time management, like I said, the ways in which they find to lose games, even when Justin Herbert plays well, like that's not what I want to look for if I'm the owner or the GM or whoever. Like I said, like, is this the guy that can carry us and Justin Herbert into the future and potentially get us to be a contender where we're fighting with the Chiefs every year? Because obviously you have to go up against Mahomes every year in the division. Like, that may not be the guys, and if he's not, then you gotta let him go. So we'll see what happens there. Any other good? The Browns were able to hold on against the Jaguars. Like I said, that game got a little bit more competitive than the Browns would have liked there at the end. But they did what they had to do. Got the win. So now they're 8-3, staring themselves right into a playoff berth. Ending, I think they had the longest drought in the NFL in terms of playoffs, if I remember correctly. But again, they got the Titans, Ravens, and Steelers to end the season, as well as the Giants and the Jets. So we'll see what happens to the Giants game. They could be Colt McCoy. That'd be easier than the Jets. But I say they still play some tough teams. Obviously, the Ravens aren't as tough as you once thought. The Steelers and Titans are still pretty solid teams. So again, they'll have their chance to play against some playoff caliber opponents down the stretch to see where they're at. But still, even if they lose all three of those games, they win the Giants and Jets games, they'll be 10-6. They'll likely get you into the playoffs this year. So that'll be good. So again, shout out to them, even though, like I said, the Jaguars game was probably too close for comfort there at the end. Because the Jaguars got the score with 2:14 left, so they had a chance. They got the onside, but obviously they didn't. And then the Browns, they got a good running game, so they were around the clock. And then the only game I wanted to touch on was, like I said, the Raiders dropped a bad one. Like I said, they got smoked by the Falcons, 43-6. Like, it was utter domination basically from the start. They were down 16-3 at half. The offense really couldn't do anything. Then, like I said, by the end of the third quarter, they were down 30-6. Like, the offense just didn't do a whole lot. Derek Carr didn't do much. Josh Jacobs didn't do much before he got hurt. So like I said, just one of the situations where not a good game for the Raiders, and a very dominant game for the Falcons because the Falcons are very strange. Like I said, Matt Ryan didn't even do a whole lot. Like, he only threw for 185, 2 touchdowns. They ran the ball pretty well. They had no Julio Jones, so you're just like, oh, that should hurt them. But again, when they get 5 sacks as a team, like I said, get an interception off Derek Carr. Derek Carr lost 3 fumbles, and so did Josh Jacobs lost 1. So they lost 4 fumbles as a team. So that's 5 turnovers in total. Then yeah, you're going to lose that game almost 100 times out of 100, like maybe 99 times out of 100. You have 5 turnovers, you're going to lose a game. So like I said, not a good win for the Raiders, not a good game for the Raiders. I just said now they're 6-5. Like I said, fighting for their playoff lives as we speak. Because like I said, it's going to be a little bit tough for them because they are now currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the conference. Like I said, they're behind the Ravens, or maybe they could potentially be tied with the Ravens depending on what happens on Tuesday, assuming that game gets played. They're behind the Colts, they're behind the Dolphins, they're behind the Browns, they're behind the Bills, Titans, and then obviously Chiefs and Steelers. And so like I said, they're on the outside looking in right now. And even like I said, they gotta try to pass up some teams because it's gonna be tough for them to get in there at this moment. Like I said, they got to get 2 spots up. They got to pass the Ravens and either the Dolphins or the Colts or somebody. Like I said, and that's gonna be tough when they're a game back in the loss column of both those teams. So like I said, tough loss. That's not a game they should have lost. But it's the NFL. It's a week-to-week league. Sometimes these things happen. So Now we will transition to the college football slate because there were, like I said, some great performances. There were some big games that were played that will have some consequence heading into the playoff potentially, and games that weren't played that could also have some consequence heading into the playoff potentially. So we will talk about all that stuff right after the break. Stay right there.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, one of the more important games in the college football slate this weekend is actually one that didn't get played, and that is the game between Ohio State and Illinois. Now, again, the game itself doesn't really matter, but the implications of the game are quite important because obviously Ohio State is having itself a little, has a little bit of a COVID outbreak within the program. Obviously, the coach, Ryan Day, has it. Some other players had enough, so they had to cancel their game. But if they don't play in either the next two games, either against Michigan State or Michigan, I don't believe they will qualify for the Big Ten championship game, and thus it'll go to Indiana. And that'll throw a whole monkey wrench into not only Ohio State's plans, because obviously they came back to play for the sake of potentially competing for a national championship. Also in the Big Ten as a whole, because like I said, that there goes their best shot at getting into the college football playoff, which would be a huge loss for the conference. And again, maybe they would have had Northwestern, but then obviously Northwestern went and lost this weekend, which we'll talk about in a second. But so because of that, now they don't even have at least Northwestern could win and they'll get in, because generally speaking, whoever won the Big Ten was probably going to get into the playoff if both teams were undefeated. But now that Northwestern is no longer undefeated, if Ohio State can't play and get in, then like I said, and you don't have a Big Ten champion in the college football playoff, and then now it's now you could maybe have Cincinnati slide in, or you could have a Florida slide in if they beat Alabama. Or like I said, I think Cincinnati's probably the best bet, just because there's a good chance they'll be undefeated at the time. And like I said, Florida could beat Alabama in theory, as long as Kyle Trask continues to play as well as he's been playing. But there's no guarantee of that. And like I said, if Ohio State wins their conference, they're in. Like I said, the four teams are pretty much locked if everything holds, and that's Alabama, Clemson, obviously, because Clemson looked dominant again, whichever one is back. Shocker, I know. Notre Dame, like I said, even if they lose to Alabama, even if they lose to Clemson in the ACC championship game, I think they've done enough this year to warrant being in. And then Ohio State, if they won the Big Ten. Like I said, if they're out, then, like I said, things get a little bit more tricky there at the top and who maybe slide in. So we'll have to see what happens next week or even the final week. Like I said, if they can't play for any reason, whether it's their own, not I'm saying own fault, but their own situation, like I said, with COVID and things like that, because again, it's within their program. Or if it's like to say maybe Michigan or Michigan State has a situation happen where something pops up in their program and they can't play, then that's going to be a problem. Like I said, so we'll kind of see what happens there. Also, I would think Ryan Day wouldn't be able to coach next week, even if they do have a game, which is already, it's not the biggest problem because we saw Alabama was fine without Nick Saban. But like I said, you never know. With that, like I said, that's a big game. Or a big game that wasn't played this weekend. Because, again, just the implications of it if they were to not be able to play one of these next two games. Or even the Big 12 championship game. We'll see kind of what happens there. Of the games that were played, like I said, Kyle Trask continuing to do dominant things. He's probably got to be the Heisman front runner at this point. Also with Justin Fields, like I said, them not playing, and also him looking a little shaky, Trevor Lawrence being out. Like Zach Wilson's probably still up there, but like I said, they probably don't give it to a guy from BYU. Najee Harris and Mac Jones are still up there, obviously. But again, Kyle Trask is having an amazing season through 3 more touchdowns today. I mean, not today, on Saturday. All to Kyle Pitts, who, I mean, if they weren't competing for a college football playoff, he may have opted out. Which, again, we'll talk about that in the next segment, actually, just because you're seeing more guys in lost seasons, quote-unquote, opt out. So, get my opinions on that. And kind of, like, if it makes sense, if it does not make sense, kind of where do you go from here kind of situation. I'm going to say Kyle Pitts. I think this is his first game in like a couple weeks. Decided to come back. And, let me just remind people what I did. Yeah, I hadn't played since the Georgia game. And just, he's came back 3 touchdowns. He's cementing himself as the best tight end in college football and potentially the first tight end off the board. And most likely the first round. Like that, not even the first round, but maybe like the top 20, you would think. Top 15, maybe even. Like I said, we'll kind of see what happens. I don't know how different teams will value tight ends, but if you're going to pick one, probably going to pick him. Let's say Kyle Trask, 3 more touchdowns today. Now has 34 on the season. I think that's the most in college football to only go with 3 interceptions. Has almost 3,000 yards. They have a couple games left, if I remember correctly. I think, well, obviously, outside the SEC championship game, they have a game against Tennessee, and they have a game against LSU. So, both those teams aren't great, so you should be able to pass some stats there. I guess that's a big win. They're at 6 right now, so they'll probably stay right around there. And I said they'll be within striking distance. They beat Alabama in the SEC championship game. Boom, they could be in the college football playoff. Speaking of the Alabama Crimson Tide, I can't find that game. They put it on Auburn. It was bad. And obviously Auburn's not that good this year, but still a rivalry game. We thought maybe it could be competitive. No, that was not the case at all. Even like I said, with Nick Saban gone, they still dominated. Devontae Smith had himself a great game, 7 for 171, 2 touchdowns. Like I said, you could have argued that he was the best receiver on that team last year, on a team that had Henry Ruggs go in the first round after he declared, have Jerry Jeudy go in the first round after he declared. It's going to have Waddle go in the first round, assuming he's healthy. And like I said, Devontae Smith's going to go in the first round as well. And you could argue he was the best receiver on that team last year. A team that's going to have 4 first-round receivers, he was the best one. And he's continuing to show that this year. He's been dominant with and without Waddle. He has over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns on the season. Mac Jones threw for 5 touchdowns in total. Again, still doing what he has to do, putting up big numbers. Najee Harris had almost 100 yards and a touchdown on the ground. So like I said, Auburn just wasn't really up to the task. Bo Nix threw 2 picks. They had decent, not even decent. They only averaged 2.9 yards per carry on the ground. It wasn't that good. They couldn't really get a whole lot done on that side. Plus, they didn't get a whole lot of pressure. Only got 2 sacks on Alabama. While on the flip side, they got 4 sacks on Auburn instead of the 2 picks and 9 QB hurries. So, like I said, Bo Nix was under pressure most of the night. So Devontae Smith had 2, Mitchie had 2, some guy named Billingsley had another one. Like I said, Najee Harris had almost 100 yards on 11 carries and a touchdown. So, like I said, Alabama still the best team in the country at this point in time. They got 2 more games left. One more game, against LSU. Then obviously the SEC championship game against Florida, most likely. So they'll kind of just see if maybe Florida can get them out of here. I doubt it, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. Like I said, Alabama looks amazing. Like I said, Clemson continued to look good. Even like I said, now that they got Trevor Lawrence back, just worked Pittsburgh. Like I said, they were up big at the half. Like it was never really all that close. They were up. Let me see, they were up 38-10 at halftime. Trevor Lawrence threw for 400 yards, 2 touchdowns. The guy Powell, who apparently they think could be a Justin Ross type, had 6 for 176 and a touchdown. Like he's been very good this year. after not really playing. I think they say he's like a fifth-year senior or whatever. Or was he the guy that they say is like Justin Ross, or was somebody else? Hold on, I might have got him confused with somebody else. No, E.J. Williams, that's who I was thinking of. But Powell, like I said, I think he's a fifth-year senior. He's been great this year for them. Obviously, with the absence of some other guys, even with different quarterbacks in there, he's been a strong presence there on the outside for the Tigers. And like I said, over almost 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like I said, he had 3 touchdowns in his career heading into the season and had never had more than 15 catches in a year. And now he's got 37 for almost 600 yards and 4 touchdowns. So again, shout out to him for holding it down. He had a good game last week as well against Notre Dame. So, like I said, holding it down in his 5th year on the team. Like I said, finally getting a shot to play a little bit. And he's showing out. So shout out to him. I say Clemson continues to be dominant. Speaking of Notre Dame, they people thought North Carolina could give them some trouble, and they did a little bit in the first half, but eventually Notre Dame was able to pull away in the second half. A couple touchdowns, like I said, got some big plays from their defense, if I remember correctly. Yeah, we were able to force some punts. Like I said, North Carolina really couldn't move the ball a whole lot in the second half. And then after the big touchdown, like that was really sealed it. The 13-yard run early in the third quarter, that was really basically what sealed it for Notre Dame. Like I said, because North Carolina couldn't really move the ball all that much. It started off pretty hot, both teams, like 4 touchdowns and 4 consecutive drives from both teams. But after that, both teams kind of struggled. And then, like I said, North Carolina just wasn't able to do a whole lot in the second half. And Notre Dame was able to pull away. So like I said, they're still holding strong, still looking like they're going to head into the rematch with Clemson undefeated. They got 2 more games left against Syracuse, who's 1-9, and Wake Forest, who's 4-3. So there should be 2 wins. Should be 11-0 heading into that game. And then whatever happens, happens. Like I said, maybe they'll beat Trevor Lawrence, maybe they won't. But still, like I said, shout out to them for having a good season. And a little bit of an upset, not even a little bit, a bit of an upset. Oregon and the Pac-12's best shot at a potential playoff berth. It probably wasn't going to happen because they were going to be too far down, not going to play enough games. But like I said, don't even worry about that no more because Oregon caught the L in the rivalry game against Oregon State. Jamar Jefferson had himself a day, 226 on the ground on 29 carries, 2 touchdowns. And like I said, they were able to do enough. They had a big comeback there in the fourth. And like I said, they were down 31-19 heading into the fourth quarter. They got 2 touchdowns. Oregon was able to get a touchdown and take the lead. And then the Oregon State Beavers were able to get a touchdown on the last drive on a quarterback sneak on 4th down after their backup quarterback had to come in because their starting quarterback hurt his hamstring on the 3rd down quarterback sneak. It was definitely a rough spot, and it was tough because Oregon thought you probably thought they had won it because they get the turnover on downs on a 4th and 7 from the Oregon 15. It's like, all right, we just got to run the clock out, and then they go. It's 2:14. They go 3 plays and 2 yards and only get 23 seconds off the clock, and Oregon State gets the ball back, having only used, I think, 2 of their timeouts, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about the timeouts, but I know that Oregon threw the ball on 3rd down. It went incomplete, even though he had a guy wide open. I think it was red, if I remember correctly. So they had a shot there to convert and then potentially win the game, but they didn't, and Oregon State was able to drive down the field, get their touchdown, and, like I said, pull off the upset stunner there. But again, shout out to their defense because that was where they really came with the big play there. After cutting it to 31-26, Oregon State, Nashawn Wright was able to get an interception. This was early in the fourth quarter, and then right after that, Oregon State went down 2 plays and scored to take the lead for the first time, for the first time in the game. And like I said, even though Oregon was able to come back, Oregon State was able to do enough there late to pull out the upset win. So again, shout out to them. That's a nice win for the program. They kind of been getting a little bothered by Oregon recently, but like I said, for Pac-12 it stings because that was their best shot getting into the playoff. If you're still worried about that, but just weren't able to get the job done, unfortunately. But such is life. Can't be great every year. So trying to think. Well, Cincinnati didn't get to play this weekend because of COVID-related stuff. Oklahoma didn't get to play this weekend. Wisconsin didn't get to play this weekend. Northwestern, like I said, lost this weekend to Michigan State. That was a bad one. because they weren't supposed to lose to Michigan State. And Michigan State's only other win was against Michigan, who's not good this year. But like I said, the Spartans came out kind of hot in the first half. We're up 17-0 early in the second quarter, and we're up 17-6 at half. Northwestern tried to mount a little comeback, took the lead early in the fourth, but then they weren't able to get a whole lot done offensively later in the game. Michigan State was able to get a couple field goals, and they had a big pick that Peyton Ramsey threw with like 6 minutes left when the score was tied 20-20, and then, like I said, Michigan State was able to drive down, get a field goal to go ahead, and then Northwestern was not able to do a whole lot. And they got the ball back with about like 10 seconds left, and they did the whole from return for a touchdown Michigan State did to kind of end the game. So hopefully nobody lost any money on that. I don't know what the spread was for that game, but I imagine it could have, been detrimental for you if you had. No, well, I guess Michigan. I don't know. I don't know what the. Like I said, I don't know what the Michigan State line was. Like if it was like +3 or like +4 or whatever. Like I said, they were obviously +3 at the time. Like I said, if it was +4, then boom, you hit and you're good. Or like the over/under on the game, I don't know if that hit. So like I said, it could be. I could see that on bad beats this week coming up. Like I said, tough loss for Northwestern. They were looking good. They were riding high. Maybe they could be the representative from the Big Ten in the college football playoff. Nope, that's gone because they caught that big L to Michigan State. I'm trying to think what else. Iowa State, shout out to them. They got a nice little win over Texas. Doesn't really matter a whole lot for the grand scheme of things, but again, just a nice win for the Iowa State program, I should say. So that's cool for them. They got a nice little touchdown run with like 1:25 left, and then Sam Ehlinger on the subsequent drive took a really bad sack. Which again, he's been at Texas long enough to know you can't really do that. But yeah, you can't take a sack with basically 4 seconds left on 3rd and 10. You just can't. You can't do that. Obviously, they had a timeout left, so that was okay. But like I said, that pushed the field goal back to 48. They lost 4 yards, pushed it back to 58 yards, I should say. Excuse me, and then the kicker missed it obviously because NFL kickers are making 58-yard field goals, let alone a college kicker. So I said you don't take a sack, throw the ball away. Maybe those 4 yards make a difference. You never know. Like I said, shout out to Iowa State. Nice little win for the program. They're 7-2 now. So that's kind of cool. They'll probably be in the Big 12 championship, I think. Yeah, because they actually, they have the lead in the conference. What do you know? So yeah, them versus Oklahoma. Oklahoma State, I think, caught another L this weekend. So that stinks for them. But hey, shout out to Iowa State. They're gonna have a chance to play for the Big 12 championship, I believe. And again, assuming they don't lose to West Virginia this weekend, I guess. Yeah, because that's their last game. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But yeah, shout out to Iowa State. Like I said, nice little win for the program there. Like I said, that's just a quick little wrap-up. Well, not a quick, but that's a little wrap-up of the college football slate from this past weekend. And after we come back, we will discuss, like I said, there's more people opting out now. You're seeing, like I said, you saw Terrence Marshall do it. You saw, I think, Cosme, the Texas offensive lineman, do it. I think Rashad Bateman did it a couple of days ago. So, like I said, we'll talk about that and discuss kind of how it's going to play out over these next couple of weeks. And like I said, what my opinions on it, like should people be doing it? Should they not be doing it? Is it too late? Should they have done it earlier? Like I said, it's hard to say for certain. But we'll talk about that after the break. So stay right there.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
shout out Sarah Fuller, the kicker from Vanderbilt, who was the first woman to participate in the Power 5 conference game. Now, Vanderbilt stinks, so she didn't really have to do a whole lot. All she really had to do was squib kick to start off the second half. But, again, that's more than any other woman had done. Obviously, there was some pushback on social media about, like, oh, she didn't even kick it that far. Like, oh, she didn't really, like, blah, blah, whatever. One, who cares? Because that was the whole point, I believe. Again, not the coach, but I believe the whole point was to kick it short so they didn't have to worry about returning it. And also, like, I see, like, weekly college kickers kick the ball out of bounds. So, like, it's not like male kickers are, like, so much better at kickoffs. Like, and also, like, maybe they should be because, like, they're not playing a new sport for the first time. But whatever. Again, honestly, there was a lot of people, but that's any time a woman does anything, especially in a male-dominated arena, like, there's always going to be, like, comments and hate and things like that. It was just unnecessary. Who really cares at the end of the day? Like, it's just a cool moment for the woman, for Sarah Fuller and for women in general that want to participate in male-dominated spaces. Like, it's a cool moment. Like, I don't just, like, but again, Twitter's not the place for that kind of stuff because a lot of people just like to hate on things, even though they could never do them. So, that's what it is. But again, I forgot to mention that, so shout out to her. And also, her comments may or may not have gotten the head coach fired. Basically talking about, I think she mentioned in, like, I think it was like an interview or something. I saw somebody post it. She's talking about how she, like, gave, like, a halftime speech about how, like, the team, like, was very lethargic and didn't seem to care. Because actually she came from the soccer team who, I believe, had won the national championship. Well, maybe not this year because of the pandemic, but, like, the year before. Something like that. So she had come from a winning program. So now to come to this football team and see, like, wow, you guys are sorry. Obviously, it has to be a shock because again, when you're used to winning, you come to a losing program. That again, that's a whole culture shock. It takes some time to get used to. And obviously, she's only been there for the one game, but she tried to give little speeches about like, yo, like why aren't y'all like cheering or like rooting each other on or like doing whatever? Y'all just be standing there on the sideline and just like not saying anything. Like, what are y'all doing? So shout out to her for feeling bold enough to speak like that at halftime of her first ever college football game. But yeah, that may or may not have led to the coach being fired, seeing as clearly he did not have a good handle on the team. But that's not what the segment was going to be about. Like I said, I forgot to mention that in the first segment. I was going on the more quote-unquote important games. But like I said, that was an important moment, so that they definitely needed to be highlighted. So shout out to her. Like I said, I wanted to touch on some of these opt-outs that we're beginning to see now more of. Obviously, a lot of people have already opted out. So that's not like anything new. But, like, we're starting to see, like, because normally you just start to see as the season dwindles down, you see, before the bowl game or things like that, like, you start to see people opt out. But now, especially with COVID getting a lot worse, and I was talking with my dad about this. It's kind of crazy when you think about it that you could argue, not even you could argue, it's factual if you, like I said, have faith in the numbers and things like that COVID is worse now than it was in September when people were first starting to opt out. Again, like I said, just the number of cases we're hitting every day and like things like that. Like it's getting up to absurd levels, and like I said, it's only going to probably continue to grow with Thanksgiving and everything that's happening, and then that leading into Christmas and New Year's and everything is going to be a mess for the next couple months, most likely. But yeah, so like I said, there's a very legitimate case to be made, and it would be a factual case that COVID is worse now than it was 2 months ago when the season started. So like I said, any person that is shocked by the number of cancellations and things or postponements or what have you at this stage clearly hasn't been paying attention, because if you thought they were going to get through a college football season and not going to, I mean, there was games getting canceled early in the season anyway. That was before it was like really out of control, and now it's out of control. So like I said, more games being postponed or canceled or whatever is probably going to happen. Like I said, I don't know if it'll affect like conference games or bowl games or national championship or college football playoff, things like that. But like I said, I'd be shocked if all those games get played without a hiccup at this point in time, like based on where a lot of these campuses and a lot of these schools and a lot of these states are at, where it says in terms of like their COVID responses and things like that. Like I said, it's getting really out of control at this point in time. But like I said, normally at this time or near this time, whatever, because we're getting into the beginning of December, you will start to see people like opting out. Like I said, teams that are like the season's about to be over, there's no conference championship, or they don't really feel like playing in a bowl game. Like, oh, okay, they'd be going on, moving on, getting ready for the draft, things like that. Now, like I said, there's teams with like a couple more games left to play, but due to, like I said, I don't know what you could argue, and it would be legitimate argument saying due to COVID, or maybe like say they think like their team is sorry, like they put enough film out there, or what have you. Like you saw a couple different guys opt out this past weekend. Terrence Marshall from LSU, the receiver, was able to showcase his skills with obviously Jamar Chase opting out and Justin Jefferson going to the NFL. Again, he wasn't necessarily the perennial first-round pick, top 10 pick that Jamar Chase is going to be. So he needed to, boost his draft stock a little bit, and obviously he was able to do that this year before, obviously, he opted out. So I said he opted out. Cosme, the tackle from Texas, opted out, and I think he's like one of the first tackles off the board in a lot of mock drafts, like him and like the obviously Sewell who opted out, the guy Slater, I think from Northwestern, who also opted out. Like there are some of the top guys. And then Asante Samuel Jr., obviously a name you will all recognize, if again you're a football fan, but he opted out as well. But again, it kind of makes sense. Florida State's, that program is a disaster right now. There's no reason to stick around there if you don't have to. Plus, he's played decent enough this year. Again, not a first-round pick, but probably should go day 2, most likely. So like I said, he's done enough this year. And then again, that comes a couple days after. I think Rashad Bateman opted out earlier this week. So again, you're seeing more of these guys in like lost seasons, you could argue, opt out. And for me personally, I get it. Like, this isn't like, if you feel like you've shown enough, what is the point? Like, honestly. Like, what is the point of sticking around now? If your team is sorry. Like I said, Texas just lost to Iowa State. Like, their season is, like, maybe you had an outside chance at the conference championship. That's done. Alright, like, what am I going to show against? I think they have Kansas and Kansas State left. Texas does. Like, what more do you need to see from me in those 2 games? Like I said, Marshall. Like I said, alright, LSU's, they still have a couple games that they're going to play Alabama. Like, that might be a good matchup. But also, like, they might get smoked. So, like, what good does that do me? Like I said, their quarterback situation is kind of a mess. Their team is kind of a mess. Like what am I doing out there that I haven't already? What am I going to show in those games that I haven't already shown throughout the season? Like I said, in the absence of Chase and of Justin Jefferson, he's been quite good. So it's like what more is he going to do? Like he has over. Oh wait, no, that can't. Okay, that's his career stats. I'm about to say. I was very confused. He has over 700 yards this year on 15 yards per catch, 10 touchdowns. Like I said, what more is he going to show? Like, what more is he going to show? Honestly, again, he could show more. Again, he's not going to be a first-round pick, I don't think. Or at least not a consensus first-round pick. Maybe he ends up going in the first, but I don't think it's consensus. Like a Bateman was. Like, Bateman's a consensus first-round pick at this point in time. So like I said, maybe he could stand and show a little bit more, but, like, also, like, the quarterback situation is a mess. And they're playing Alabama. Like, why am I doing that? Like, I understand why he's like, you know what, this probably isn't it for me. And like I said, Asante Samuel Jr., like I said, another guy who's not necessarily a first-round pick, but, like, Florida State is a mess, and, like, COVID has caused them to miss some games. It's like, all right, let me just get out of here. Let me just be done with this. Now, the one thing I will say is, if they're doing this, like, they have to be leaving campus, right? Like, there's no way you could justifiably say that COVID, not the only reason, but is a reason, and then stay on campus. Now, I don't know how the schooling works. Like, I imagine a lot of these places, well, I don't know, because Florida, they're like Atlanta and Georgia. They're a little bit more open than some of the other states. So I don't know if they're having in-person class or what the deal is there, but, like, you would think if they're opting out of the season and not playing, if not totally, but in part due to COVID, like, they shouldn't also be going to classes still. Like, that would seem kind of, I wouldn't say stupid, but, like, foolish, because then, obviously, you don't want to risk catching it from the team, then you could still catch it on campus. So I said, that's the only thing I would be curious about is, like, what happens there. But like I said, in terms of, like I said, the guys opting out, like, I don't think they'll be the last. Let me just put it that way. Like, I imagine as more of these teams' seasons start to finish up, like, I don't imagine a lot of these guys are going to be going to the bowl games. A lot of these, like top, like, day 1 and 2 picks. Let me just put it that way. Like, but even then, still, you see guys opting out of bowl games all the time that aren't necessarily day 1 or 2 picks just because of injury and things like that. So like I said, why am I going to get injured for a team that is sorry, while also potentially risking COVID when we don't really know the long-term effects of it? Like, obviously, not everybody has it severely, or has a severe case of it. Not everybody is affected a great deal, but we don't know what the effects will be 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, or other people that tested positive. whether they had it bad or like it wasn't that bad. We don't really know what the effects are going to be. So like I said, if I'm an NFL player and my goal has always been to get to the NFL, why would I want to chance it? Like I said, you've already seen a couple of NFL guys like not be able to play. I think there was one guy there was a guy down in Jacksonville, rookie down in Jacksonville, and I think there was another guy in with Minnesota that had some issues that I believe are COVID related. And like I said, they weren't the only ones. Obviously, the other athletes have had different issues that flared up due to COVID or were noticed due to COVID or things like that. So like I said, you don't really want to risk that if, like I said, your goal has always been to get to the NFL. So like I said, that makes sense to me. And on top of the fact that, again, I'm going to go out there and playing a meaningless bowl game for a team that's sorry, like for what? Or I'm playing like a meaningless, like I think there's like most teams maybe have no more than 2 regular season games left. Like what are we doing here? Like what are we doing here? Like I get it. Like it's like why risk it? I say not only do you risk COVID, but you risk just general injury or looking sorry. Like if you think you've done enough at this point to the season, and you know your team's not going anywhere, like let it go. Like all right, if you're on Ohio State or like Clemson, you know Ohio State, if they can't play in the Big Ten championship game, then I think you might see. It's really just Sean Wade, but like he also hasn't been that good this year, so maybe he can opt out, or like Justin Fields or whatever. Like if they're not gonna be playing in like the big the playoff or like I said the conference championship game. Like what point do they have? The Justin Fields probably does need to show a little bit more. Like I said, if you're not on Clemson, you're not on Alabama, you're not on Notre Dame, you're not on one of those teams. Like why? Like if I'm like a guy, like I think who's the guy? Seth Williams on Auburn. Like why am I still out there? Like, again, not that he had the greatest game this past weekend because he didn't. But again, it's like why? Like if you feel like you've done enough, like what's the point? If you're on, like I said, if you're on LSU, your other guys on LSU, I don't know who else they might have this draft eligible, but like if you are another guy on LSU, like if you think you've done enough, what's the point? Like I said, if Florida loses the conference championship game to Alabama, which is very possible, like if I'm Kyle Pitts' agent, shut it down. Or no, he doesn't have an agent. But if I'm like an advisor or like a friend or like a family member or whatever, like shut it down, dude. Like you've done enough. Like I think that's what happened with Pat Fryermuth up at Penn State. Like again, we won't know for certain because he won't say exactly he was hurt. But like he was playing through the injury, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Wow, we stink." So like, let me not do this. I still think I should be the second or third tight end off the board. So like, all right, I'll be good. I'll be a day 2 pick most likely. Like I'm fine. I'll be straight. Let me get healthy. Guys said now not only are you risking getting COVID, but you're risking hurting yourself on a team that is not good. Like, if you're gonna play through injury and you want to play through injury for a team that's competing for a championship, by all means, like I get it. Like I wouldn't always advise it, but I get it. But if you're on a team that's sorry, oh no, rest up, baby. Rest up, get healthy. Like what are we doing here? Like the future is in the NFL. Like that's where you're going to be going. Make sure you're right for that. Make sure you're training for that. Make sure you're getting as much help and coaching up and different things for that. Like why worry about this game or this team that again, I understand like they're your brothers and different things. I've never played in a college game. I don't know what the camaraderie is like in the locker room and the brotherhood is like because obviously you guys do a whole lot of things together, live together, work out together, take classes together, play games together, practice together, different things. Go to study hall, different things together. So I get that. I hang out together off the field. So I get that. So I understand like it may be a tough thing to turn your back on those guys necessarily. But also, I feel like a lot of those guys understand, especially for the top guys, like, bro, go get this money. Like we're not like you're doing this for free. Like we're all doing this for free. There's a select few of us that could potentially go to the NFL and make solid money. If you think if you're one of those guys, like by all means, I'm not in that position, so I don't have to answer to that. But I feel like that should be respected. Listen, because at the end of the day, everyone, obviously we're a team, but at the end of the day, everyone has to look out for themselves in like life in general. Like you, as much as you want to help out your friends and your family, whatever. Like at the end of the day, you got to make sure you're doing right by yourself, whatever that may mean. So I said, if the right thing to do for you is like, hey, let me not play these last couple games and like start to train and get right for the combine and like the draft, things like that, by all means, I feel like that should be respected. Now again, obviously people always like speak high of like the football guys that want to play in the bowl game and blah 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 whatever. But then they never really speak about the guys that like get hurt. Like Jake Butt's career has never really recovered from him getting hurt in the bowl game. Jalen Smith's career did recover a little bit. He ended up getting paid, but now he's sorry. So I mean, at least he got the bread first. But I said like there's no guarantee. Like you get a serious injury, like I said with COVID now, like you catch that, and again you still could catch it just being outside in general because again as we talked about, it's kind of ravaging all over the country. And like I said, you don't know the effects of that, and like I said, running through some of these programs kind of crazy. And like I said, just in case you're one of the unlucky people that catches it and like again has a bad effect with like your cardiovascular system or like your heart or whatever, and now you can't play football anymore. Like I said, that would be a terrible way to end your career. So like I said, I don't think this will be like I don't think this is the end of the opt-outs. Like I said, it's going to happen more with more seasons kind of quote unquote done. Like I said, you see teams like out of contention for championships or conference championships or like major bowl games, or even like once the bowl games hit, like it's just like it's probably not worth it. So again, we gotta keep track of that, see what happens. But like if you look through, the funny thing will be that we're looking through a mock draft and seeing how many guys did or didn't opt out. By the end, because like if you look through the top 10, I'm on like Tankathon. So if you look through the top 10 right now, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in the top 10 that already opted out, and that doesn't include, and then in the top 15 doesn't include Cosme, who just opted out. That doesn't include Bateman in the first round, who just opted out. Like Frymouth, in effect, opted out. Like I said, the Terrence Marshall was supposed to go in the second round, he opted out. Javon Holland supposed to go in the second round, he opted out. Like I said, there's you looking through some of these, the South Samuel was supposed to go in the second round according to this mock draft. Paris Ford, another guy that opted out earlier in the year. And then you go through the list of guys that opted out, and you're like, wow, there's a lot of first or second round picks that either opted out before or during the season. So this evaluation this year would definitely be very interesting. Like I said, you have less game film to go off of. With some of the guys, you might only have 2 years. Some of these guys you really might like Rosu, you really only have like the 1 year. Some of these guys you might have like 2.5 years, like 2 and a few games. Like this is going to be a very weird year in terms of evaluation for draft guys, just like last year was, because obviously they didn't have a lot of the in-person stuff. So you would have to trust your scouts and your film study on this one, because like I said, it's going to be tough to project some of these guys if they haven't played in a game in a year, kind of thing. So that'll be interesting. But like, yeah, long story short, it's not these guys. Like I said, Terrence Marshall, Asante Samuel, Cosme, like they're not Bateman. Like they're not going to be the last guys to opt out. I think like we're going to see more of these as the season starts to wind down. But that's just me personally. I guess we'll kind of see what happens there. But going from college back to the NFL, talking about their COVID situation, we got to talk about like what happened with the Broncos. Obviously, we talked about it a little bit with them having to play a receiver at quarterback, but like, how did we get here? Like, what kind of examples is it showing for the NFL? Like, what do I think they were trying to show by having the Broncos not forfeit this game, because they could have easily forfeited the game. And then also, like I said, with the Ravens situation, and then not just the Ravens, now because Steelers got some people that tested positive as well, and then pushing this game back to Tuesday. Like how are we going to be able to get through this for the playoffs? So, like I said, we'll discuss all of that right after the break. So stay right there.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Podcast Network. So as we kind of touched on earlier, that Broncos-Saints game was quite a bit of a mess. Obviously, if you were paying attention, or you just were, you paying attention to the NFL news over the weekend, you knew that the Broncos had, I think it was Jeff Driscoll, test positive, and then all the other quarterbacks in the room were deemed high-risk contacts due to the fact that they were around him without a mask, I believe. And obviously this was verified because Drew Lock put out a statement basically all but claiming this and saying, like, yeah, we, like, normally are, like, pretty good with following protocols and things like that, but, like, in one instance we screwed up and were around him with no mask, and thus the NFL came down on us the way in which they did, which, again, just serves as a reminder that you can do everything right, like, 90% of the time. And, again, no one else does positive so far, but my point is that you can do stuff right 90% of the time, but it's the 10% or the 5% or the 2%, whatever, that you don't, that could be what screws it up. And even still, you could do it right 99% of the time, 100, like darn near 100, and still might not work out. That's just the way viruses work. So yeah, like there wasn't really much they could do after the fact. Obviously, you would prefer not to have this happen. You'd hope it's just the one guy, then like they can isolate him, and then everyone else is good. But because of the fact they were around him with no mask, thus led to them having to start an undrafted rookie wide receiver that kind of sort of played quarterback in college. Again, obviously, he was really good in high school. Apparently won like a state championship or whatever. But then he played at Wake Forest and had to get switched to receiver or whatever. And then obviously came out as a receiver into the draft. Which again, and someone points out, but it goes to show, like, a lot of people, like, think, like, oh, they were good in high school, like, that means, like, they could have played in college or the pros or whatever. And, like, again, this guy was a state champion in high school and looked absolutely lost out there in the NFL because it's just so much faster. And again, not that I blame him. I don't think he got really any practice reps because this literally came up, like, Saturday, like, either Friday or Saturday that the positive test came out. So again, it's not like it's not like this happened Monday or Tuesday where they had time to plan or like prep them or like go through like a game plan or whatever. Like, no, they were just like, I guess I can kind of throw a football. So like, hey, we'll go with that. And I know it started out with the Wildcat. They had some Royce Freeman in there. I think he's technically the emergency quarterback. Started out with like Philip Lindsay in the Wildcat or whatever. Like it was a bad situation. And obviously Vic Fangio was not happy about it because they play a game without a QB. But I think Kareem Jackson, he has some interesting comments after the game about this situation, and I don't necessarily think I disagree with him. So, if I can open this article up, because the ESPN app wants to be slow, like it normally is. I don't know why it does this to me sometimes, but such is life. But yeah, this is Kareem Jackson, after the game, was talking to, like, again, to reporters or whatever, and he said that I feel like maybe the game could have been moved. But at the same time, maybe the league was making an example of us as far as maybe not doing the things we needed to do in that particular room, the quarterback room. Jackson said, obviously the guys didn't follow their protocols, and for the NFL to see that, I guess they felt like they had to make an example. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. Obviously, it's our guys' fault for not wearing their masks, but at least maybe move the game to the next day or whenever, so we're given a fighting chance, Jackson had. It's obviously disappointing. I'm not sure why it wasn't moved. I have no clue. As a competitor, it's definitely frustrating. Obviously, my boy Kendall Hinton was out there and obviously did not get the job done. Went 1 for 9 passing. Had the one completion. Shout out to him for that. For 13 yards, also threw 2 interceptions. So had more completions to the other team than he had to his own team in this game. Broncos only gained 112 yards overall. The lowest output in the game since 1992. We lost to Washington. So yeah, definitely not the greatest offensive performance. But yeah, like I said, I think from Kareem Jackson's point, I do kind of get it. Like in terms of his point, like maybe the NFL making an example out of us. And like I said, maybe they are. Because obviously they've had situations in the past where they could have pushed games back and they didn't. Obviously the Niners were famously involved, not famously, but were involved in that early on. When that game, I think it was the Thursday night game against the Packers. They basically had to play with like no receivers. Because like half their receiver room plus like their left tackle all were, or like someone tested positive and those guys were deemed close contacts or whatever. And they could have like pushed the game back to Sunday. They're like, it's not that serious. So like we'll do that. But then say you see the Ravens game, like that got pushed back from Thursday to Sunday. And and then from Sunday to Tuesday. And I said the same thing happened with the Titans, like in their games before, and like obviously that affected the Steelers and the Bills and everybody. Like again, kind of got screwed over by the Titans a little bit. But again, it is kind of interesting to see when and how the NFL picks and chooses to punish people. Like I said, they easily could have moved this game to Monday or Tuesday as well, just like they did like with the Ravens. Like, but they really want this Ravens-Steelers game to get played. So like, all right, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure this game gets played, even though we can't play it Sunday, obviously, because they were positive tests, like I think either Friday or Saturday. There's no way you could play it on Sunday. With positive tests that close to the game, especially when it was more. Like I said, there was already a lot of positive tests from the Ravens side. Now Steelers players are testing, and staff are testing positive, which again is why don't ever mock or make fun of or belittle someone's COVID response. Like I said, obviously the Steelers were so upset and they're like, "Oh, this is unfair. It's happening to us again. Like, how could the NFL do this to us and postpone the game? Blah blah blah." And then like lo and behold, like literally Friday morning, it was like, "Oh, James Conner, he tested positive." And obviously, I would hope no one's making fun of James Conner because obviously he's a cancer survivor. We don't really know how it'll affect him. Like I said, it's just this is why you shouldn't get on your high horse about the virus and what you're doing, because again, you don't know. Like you don't know. Like, and the Steelers were like, "Oh, we're doing everything right. Like, look, it's the Ravens. It's just them. Blah blah blah." And then lo and behold, they have people in their organization test positive. Now you look kind of crazy, being like, "How could the NFL postpone the game?" Well, clearly they did the right thing, because if they didn't, then James Conner would have played in that game positive, or would have played in that game and tested positive, which again is also happening far too often in the NFL. That's a separate point. But yeah, so like I said, back to the Broncos real quick. So like I said, I do believe that they kind of did make an example just to show them, like, look, if you guys don't get a handle of this during the regular season or into the playoffs or whatever, there's a chance that you're going to be playing an entire game without a quarterback or without linemen or without receivers or whatever. So like I said, again, you could do a lot of things right and it still happen to you. So I'm not going to say it's a simple black and white, but the least you could do is when you're in the building, wear a mask. Or like when you're around people, like wear a mask. Like that seems like a very simple thing to do. That doesn't really require a whole lot of effort or time or anything like that. Like just like, hey, just like wear a mask in the building or when you're around people. Like that seems very simple. So like I said, I think that's the NFL being like, look, if you guys don't follow these protocols and stuff goes bad for you, it just goes bad for you. Like there's not much we can do. Now, again, they could have postponed the game, but there's no reason for them not to when they already postponed the game this weekend. Again, like I said, it's clear that the NFL picks and chooses which games it feels is necessary to postpone because, like I said, they did it with the Titans before, and they did it with the Steelers Ravens this very week. So, but again, they didn't do it with the Niners Packers. It's like, oh, who cares? Like the Niners are probably going to lose. And plus, they already missed a Thursday night game this week. I mean, that this year at that point, I think that was because they missed the Chiefs-Bills game on Thursday night, obviously. So I forget if that was like a week before or like something. It was somewhere around that time. So I think they were trying not to lose too many Thursday night games in a row. And it's probably why I think they pushed on. Plus, again, they thought the Niners were going to lose anyway. So like, what's the point? So I think it's kind of what they were like with the Broncos. They're like, you're probably going to lose anyway. So like, who cares, honestly? And again, that's messed up because again, you should give both teams as much of a fighting chance as you could. But also, again, just like, hey, if you're in the quarterback room, just like wear your mask around people, because then you wouldn't have been taken out of the situation if it for shown that you wore your mask. Then like, hey, maybe you might be all right. But then like obviously Drew Lock came out and said like, yeah, we weren't wearing our masks. So you can't really be mad at the NFL for being like, all right, well you guys screwed up, so this is your problem to deal with. Like I said, that's just hopefully that reminds people, shows people like, look, this could happen to any of you teams. Like. And obviously, we haven't seen too much of this, but like I said, it's not impossible where if the one person in the room has the virus or is positive for it. Like if they're around people that like other position mates or other like just people on the team with no mask, like that could affect an entire room. And I said we saw with the Raiders where they had people like a bunch of guys going on the COVID list from their offensive line. Obviously, a lot of them came off there before their game. Like I said, that could happen literally all the time. And like I said, the problem is that it happened like Friday, Saturday. Like if this happened Monday or Tuesday, you get enough positive and you get enough negative tests to where like, all right, you can't practice, but at least you can play on Sunday. So they wouldn't have to start a receiver. Because it happened like Friday or Saturday, it was like, oh, well, that's too late because now we got to test these guys, make sure they're good. And we're not going to know before Sunday. Like I said, the same thing that happened with the Niners game. It was like, if you push it up to Sunday, maybe these guys can play, but like we're not doing that. So like because the positive test came out, like I think it was like Wednesday or Thursday, whenever, the high risk people, we don't have enough time to test them to make sure they're good. They can't play. So like I said, hopefully that this gets people to be on top of their protocols, be on top of their teammates, be on top of their coaches, whoever, to make sure that we don't have that situation again within your team, so that you're not playing a game without a starting quarterback or starting receivers or a starting offensive line or starting defensive line or starting secondary, whatever may happen. Like I said, if it gets into the room, it's possible that it could whether people actually catch it is one thing, but if they're deemed high risk contacts, then like they're not going to play, and then your team is screwed. Obviously, it's easier to play without like starting corners or starting safeties than it is to play without a starting quarterback or any quarterback at all. But still, if you have to pull guys up and play them out of position at any position, it's not going to go well for you that game. So, like I said, we'll see what happens there. But also, again, hopefully like the NFL is a better plan for this come playoff time. Again, obviously, a lot of this is on the teams to be on top of their game. That's true. But also, let's like try to, again, I don't think the bubble's gonna, they're not gonna do a bubble. But also, like, again, you can't expect with, like, again, the cases going up around the country, things like that, you're gonna have people just like traveling normally like they did during the season, games not to be affected by COVID. Now, again, it is what it is to a degree in terms of like, you knew that was going to happen when you signed up, and this is kind of what they agreed to. So it's like, hey, look, we have these protocols in place, and if somebody tests positive, this is X, Y, and Z happens, whatever. But I'm saying, like, that's one thing for a regular season game. Now we're talking about the playoffs, where, like, Super Bowls, legacies, things like that are on the line. Like, what are they going to do? Like, obviously, I know Lamar Jackson tested positive after the game was postponed from Thursday, but, like, what happens if Patrick Mahomes tests positive like the day before a playoff game? Are they going to get that out? Are they going to let that get out? Are they going to hide it until after the game? Like, what are they? I'm curious to see what the situation would be like if the NFL knew, like, oh yeah, Patrick Mahomes, our star player, the player that most people want to watch more than any other player in the league, has. I'm not wishing it upon him, but I'm saying like something like that, or like I said, a big name guy gets it before a playoff game. Like, what are they going to do? Are they just going to play the playoff game as normal? Are they going to postpone it? Are you gonna, like I said, are you gonna are you gonna try to what would the plan be? Because again, it's one thing to do this in the regular season, like that's cool. No, it's not good or cool or whatever, but like that's one thing. The playoffs are a completely different animal. Like you have to try to be more stringent. Like you said, you saw the MLB, you try to do a little bit bubble there for the playoffs. Once they got down to enough, like the lower amount of team, they tried to bubble it off to make sure everybody was relatively safe. Like I said, the NFL is just going to like let them travel and do whatever. Like that seems not that bright. If that's what the plan is. I don't know what the plan is, but if that's what the plan is, it seems like a little dicey. And now you're running the risk of, again, a guy, even if he doesn't have it, even if it's a false positive, if it happens on a Saturday and they either play Saturday night or on Sunday, like you can't have them play because you don't know that it's a false positive at that time. So like I said, hopefully they have some sort of plan in place to try to, what they're going to do if that happens, because, like I said, having guys miss playoff games for due to COVID is going to be a mess. But it's going to happen. Like, guys are going to miss the game because guys are missing regular season games due to COVID. Like, guys are going to miss playoff games due to COVID. It's going to happen to somebody. I don't know if it's going to be in the Super Bowl or in a conference championship game or divisional round or wild card, whatever. But it's going to happen for some team. And it's going to be a big deal. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully the NFL is prepared for that to happen. And hopefully it's prepared for it to happen to the Stars. Not to say it's going to happen to the Stars, but you have to prepare as if it's going to happen to the Stars. And what are you going to do if that's the case? I said you're just going to play a playoff game without Aaron Rodgers or without Tom Brady or without Drew Brees or without Alvin Kamara or without Aaron Donald or without, like I said, Mahomes or Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill or Andy Reid. Like, that's what you're going to do? And if that's what you're going to do, then fine. But like I said, hopefully they're trying to put something in place to make sure, like, they can lower the risk of that or lower the chances of that happening. Or like I said, put tougher protocols or tougher punishments or whatever you have to do to make sure that, like, this kind of thing where you have a whole quarterback room out for a game doesn't happen in the playoffs. Because like I said, if it does, then the one team's screwed. And also, again, you mess with the product of the game and, like, the integrity of it. And, like, everyone's going to be like, oh, this game, like, the championship doesn't really count, blah, 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 whatever. There's going to be a whole mess if that happens. So hopefully, like I said, we're prepping for that in case it happens. and they're just hoping that they don't ever have to like break glass in case of emergency kind of thing there. But he has a bit of a mess. So we'll see this Ravens-Steelers game happens on Tuesday. I'm still not 100% sure, but I mean, the NFL has shown that they're willing to push through, regardless of whether they should or shouldn't. I know, obviously, Adam Schefter tweeted out like the NFL hasn't had to cancel a game yet, even though again they could have easily canceled this game. With the Broncos Saints, they could have canceled, like I said, the Niners game earlier this season. They could have canceled a bunch of different games. They chose not to, and there's a difference between choosing not to cancel and not canceling. They're not canceling games because they don't want to. That doesn't mean they couldn't. I mean, that doesn't mean that they couldn't cancel the games. Like, there have been situations where it's like, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't play this. But, like, hey, they're going to push through until it gets, like, super bad. Like, they're going to be like, yeah, look, we can do this. Because they don't have extra weeks built in. They're not college. They're not the MLB where they have, like, you can't do doubleheaders. You can't, like, again, you don't have open weeks. I mean, they did have open weeks. That's how the end of the season does, but now, related during the season, no one has buys anymore, really. No one has extra weeks they could use to try to play a game if it has to get postponed. Like, they're kind of past that now. So, they're going to do everything they can to play this game. They'll push it back until Tuesday, whatever. I guess Tuesday is the latest you can push it back, because Wednesday is the next week. In terms of, like, preparation and things like that. Even Monday is the next week in terms of preparation, but you get the point. Like I said, Tuesday is going to be the latest they'll push it back. Like I said, just because they haven't canceled a game doesn't mean that they shouldn't have canceled a game before. So we'll see if this game goes off on Tuesday. Hopefully it does, because I want to see it. But also, like, the Ravens are going to get smoked, so it is what it is. Very unfortunate for them. But before we get out of here, just one more segment, we will discuss, obviously, Matt Patricia no longer had the job. Bob Quinn, the GM of Detroit, no longer had the job. Caldwell, the GM of the Jaguars, no longer had the job. So we'll talk about that. I'm talking about what jobs are currently open and what jobs could potentially be open within the coming weeks. So we discuss all that right after the break. Stay right there.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
And we're back with the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast. So as we already mentioned, Matt Patricia, Bob Quinn. But I guess, well, maybe his name is Robert. I don't know. But Bob Quinn, both out with the Lions. I mean, not a shock to anyone. But, like, again, you know, you're never certain if these guys are going to get fired. End of season, during the season, whatever. But I know the Lions have been bad, literally Matt Patricia the entire time there. So it's not shocking that he got fired, but yeah, when you get embarrassed on national TV, that'll usually do it. So under Matt Patricia, they were 13, 29, and 1 since he took over in 2018. Since Quinn has been the team's GM, which was since 2016, the Lions are 31, 43, and 1. During his tenure, and obviously the best years were the Caldwell years, the Matt Patricia years have obviously been nothing short of a disaster. Obviously, he was hired by Bob Quinn because they had ties to New England, tried to bring some of that success over here, you know, because obviously the reason why they let Caldwell go is because they thought that he couldn't get them over the hump, they couldn't beat the good teams, and obviously Matt Patricia couldn't beat the good teams, couldn't beat the bad teams, couldn't beat the average teams, like they just weren't that good. And again, you probably knew what it was once they lost that big lead to the Bears, because the Bears aren't that good, Mitch isn't that good. And you lose that game, that's how you start the season off. That's not going to get the job done. And also, obviously, they lost back-to-back games against Carolina and Houston, two teams that, while not bad, aren't like that great, so they're like winnable games. And like obviously, then trading for Everson Griffin and signing Adrian Peterson, things like that. Like they thought like maybe they can make a playoff push. Obviously, because you don't make those kind of vet additions if you don't think that. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening because obviously they're going in the wrong direction, having lost both those games in a span of like 10 days. In where if you win both those games, maybe you're right in the thick of things in the playoff hunt like the Vikings are. But now, like I said, they're very much on the outside looking in. And it's been a very disappointing, like I said, last 10 days, so they got to figure out where to go from here. But yeah, one of those situations where you're not that shocked. Like Matt Patricia, the fact he made it past last year is pretty good for him because he probably should have been gone last year. But it was both funny and kind of sad seeing, not to say people like rejoicing, but like a lot of former Lions players weren't necessarily that shocked or that mad or speaking up for Matt Patricia when he got canned. So that it kind of tells you just kind of the locker room and the culture he had built there in Detroit, where it's like, yeah, a lot of people didn't really like him. Not to say you have to like your boss in order to be successful, but it was clear, like, not that people like felt bad for him that he was no longer employed with Detroit. So that's an interesting thing there as well. So now the official openings currently in the NFL are obviously the Falcons coach and GM spot, the Lions coach and GM spot, the Texans coach and GM spot, and as of today, it's just the Jaguars GM spot. Apparently, Marone's safe through the end of the season, which, I mean, hopefully they don't bring him back because, again, they're not going anywhere with him. But I do kind of get, because at least the team has been playing hard. They're still losing, which is important. They need to lose to get into the Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields sweepstakes. But because they are playing hard, like at least, hey, that's usually a good sign on like the coach. That, hey, look, they're your team, especially when they're an inferior team that isn't really as good as some of the teams they're competing with. Like, again, they're not as good as the Packers. They're not as good as maybe they're probably not as good as the Browns. Like, well, obviously record-wise, they're not anywhere close to the Browns. But like talent-wise, they're not that good as the Browns, even with their injuries and people on like COVID lists and things like that. But still, they're playing hard. And like I said, that's a testament to the coaching. That's getting these guys to play hard every week. Even, again, when they're undermanned or they're out, like they're out-talented isn't a word, but like you get the point. They're this inferior team in terms of talent and things like that. You have to make up for it in like being well coached. That's the same way how Rutgers is performing, how they're performing this year. Again, are they as talented as the other teams in Big Ten? No, not even close. But they have close losses against a couple teams, and they obviously have won a couple games, which is more than some teams like Penn State that supposedly have a lot more talent can say, and we'll see how that plays out this upcoming weekend because they play Rutgers. And I forget what their stadium name is now. I almost said MetLife. Like I said, in New Jersey. So we'll see how kind of that goes. I could easily see Penn State catching a fat L there, which would be kind of embarrassing. But at least they beat Michigan. So they're terrible, but not as bad as Michigan. So that's fine. But back to the NFL. So like I said, those are the three plus a GM opening currently. They're currently available. Now, are those going to be the only ones available? Obviously not. Like I said, Adam Gase, don't know what they're waiting for there. Like, I understand, like, maybe firing Adam Gase isn't going to change anything this season. Cool. But you could also get a head start on the coaching search, which you can't if Adam Gase is still there. So like I said, him still being there was weird because obviously Joe Douglas is going to be there. He just got hired. So there's no way he's leaving, obviously. But like Adam Gase, there's no reason for him to be around. Just cut it off, especially after the answers he kind of gave about how like he supposedly wasn't calling the plays, but then like he was because the other guy was like basically not doing anything on the sidelines. He was talking to players and stuff when players were supposed to be called in, but like Adam Gase was trying to like lie through it. It was a bit of a mess. But yeah, like there's no reason for him to stick around. Like let him go. Let's like cut the weight. Anthony Lynn, again, don't ever want to see a black man lose his job like that. But Chargers keep finding ways to lose. And like I said, the end of the game sequence there was horrific. That was poorly coached. That was poorly done. Again, the time management cost them 2 timeouts. That obviously would have been useful there at the end. You get that big play. Boom, boom, boom. You call a timeout. Now you save a good amount of time. And like I said, now you can run whatever plays you want. And you still potentially have time to score and then get the onside kick, things like that. But you can't do that when you have to run everybody up down the field 40, 50 yards, and like I said, you let 20, 30 seconds run off the clock, and then again, obviously you run the ball on first down and like don't spike it. Like I said, all that was a bit of a mess. And that's on top of the fact that they have already shown that they can continue to invent ways to lose. Now, last year, some of it was because Philip Rivers was turning the ball over a lot. This year, they don't have that. And yet, they're still finding ways to lose the games. That's an indictment on the coach. As I said, I don't ever wish for a black man to be out of a job. But Anthony Lynn, I'm sorry, brother. Like, this is it for you. I believe. That's just me. So like I said, that's a tough one. And then also another one I think is a sneaky one, but I do think it's very possible, especially if they get embarrassed on Monday night against the Seahawks. I do think the head coach and GM positions could be open in Philly this offseason. Now, it's going to be rough because obviously the whole Carson Wentz situation, he's tied to the team too, I think. Unless you can get a trade partner with them, maybe it could be good for the Colts if they don't want to bring back Phil Rivers or whatever. But again, it's still worth a lot of money. Like I said, if he stays tied to the team at least through 2021, if not 2022, like it's hard to get out of that money. So that's at least another year or two. They just drafted a quarterback in the second round. So there's no need for both of them to be on the team next year, just creating an unnecessary quarterback controversy. Like I said, you got to probably, and since Jalen Hurts is a much more cost-controlled contract, if you're going to, you can't bring both of them back next year, in my opinion. Or if you even, like I said, if you're up high enough, which is not impossible for them, and you get a guy like, if you really like Zach Wilson, whoever the next GM or coach is, or you really like Trey Lance or whatever, and you want to pick them, all right, fine. But again, that would be kind of wild because then you have a $30 million quarterback, you just drafted a quarterback in the second round, to draft another quarterback in the first round when you have a lot of holes on that roster that need to be fixed, would be kind of wild to me. But hey, we'll kind of see what happens when that happens. They did say they wanted to do quarterback factory, though, so, I mean, that would be very much on brand for that. Like I said, if they get embarrassed on Monday, which is, again, not out of their own possibility, I do think there could be changes in Philly very, very shortly. Because, again, there was the reports that came out this weekend. Obviously, you know if you're an Eagles fan, but if you're not, this report that came out this weekend that apparently the owner didn't attend the game against the Browns last week. Apparently, he claimed it was out of caution because he was going to be traveling to see his mother or something for Thanksgiving. But some people think it was out of frustration. Apparently, he's stormed out of practices and things like that. And just so happens that there was another report that came out that Doug Peterson wouldn't exactly be mad if he got fired from the Eagles this offseason. So I thought the timing of those was kind of peculiar. Like right before the national TV game, where you're probably going to lose, may or may not get embarrassed. So then, if you're fired on Tuesday, it's like, all right, it's not a shock for anybody. So like I said, I feel like we're putting little testers out there to be like, hey, look, Doug might not make it through the year, so just let people know. Not the Super Bowl winning head coach, he'll probably be down in Houston or something pretty soon. Now, don't know exactly how he'll do down there because they don't have, like I said, they don't have first, second round picks, but they have Deshaun Watson. So there's that. But like I said, the issue with Doug has been, like I said, the offense hasn't really looked that great. And maybe, like I said, maybe having Deshaun Watson, a more dynamic and a better quarterback than Carson Wentz, even though Carson Wentz hasn't been that bad the last couple of years. It's really just this past year. He's been absolutely garbage. But before that, he was a fine quarterback. He was above average to good quarterback. Especially last year and the year before, even coming off the ACL and then with the broken back. He was fine. Wasn't spectacular, wasn't MVP caliber or whatever, but he was fine. He wasn't that bad. Now this year he's been atrocious. That's the problem. Like I said, if he was just fine, like he was the past couple of years, or good, not even just fine, if he was good the past couple of years, then again maybe the situation is a little bit different. We're not talking about Doug Peterson being out of a job in Philly, 3 years removed from winning the Super Bowl. But yeah, like I said, for Philly, it's he could be gone, and again with Howard Roseman, he can't stay. Because then this will be his third coaching search he'll be a part of. So clearly he's not good at picking the coaches, and obviously the players are him. He's not good at that either. Didn't draft DK. Obviously, if you're in English, what do you already know about all these debates that happen all the time? But didn't draft DK Metcalf or Terry McLaurin when you could have drafted them, and stuck with, and then drafted JJ instead. JJ Arthur-Whiteside. Let's see who else. Didn't draft Jeremy Chin. or Logan Wilson or like Denzel Mims or Christian Fulton or J.K. Dobbins or whatever in the second round when it was supposedly that you were choosing between like him and like Chin or Hurts, obviously. Chin and like Dobbins, and you decided to go with Hurts, Howie, Bulls, whatever. He decided like, yeah, quarterback's what we need. Not like we need help on defense or anything like that, and Jeremy Chin might be the defensive rookie of the year. Like, we couldn't use that at all. Because not our linebackers are terrible or second or safety. We needed somebody to replace Malcolm Jenkins. Like, no, we're fine there. So we did that. Like I said, the receiver situation. And then obviously, the Rager Justin Jefferson situation is a bit different because, again, Rager's at least looked much better than JJ did as a rookie. But the receiver picked literally right after him is like a top 10 receiver in the league this year. Again, you could argue that going to next year if he will be that high, but like as of right now, it's playing like a top 10 receiver in the league. That's not a good look. Not for the player, because again, he didn't pick himself, but for the GM. And you're going to have a top 10 draft pick this year. How can you trust him to hit on that pick? When, again, you look through his drafts recently, and not everybody's drafts are great. Like, he doesn't even have a guy that's made the Pro Bowl that he drafted in the last, like, 5 years that isn't Carson Wentz. And like I said, that was the 1 year he got hurt. Everyone else, no Pro Bowl appearances between them. From 2016 till right now. Well, again, Miles Sanders could have done it this year, obviously, if he got more touches than if he wasn't banged up for a couple games. And obviously, he's been good. Dallas Goedert's been good. Josh Sweat's been good. Obviously, they required Slay. He's been good. But there's just not enough home runs. Few singles, maybe a double here with Goddard or Miles, and obviously Carson Wentz helped them win the Super Bowl by, again, being good prior to Nick Foles stepping in. But I said, there's too many singles in the draft, not enough home runs. Like I said, there's young, great talent on almost every team in the league, you would argue. And the Eagles have none of it. And that's an indictment on the GM. So like I said, those spots could be open as well very, very soon. So, like I said, that'd be up to what? Well, if you include Jacksonville's GM, or Jacksonville's coaching spot, that could be up to like 7 coaching and GM vacancies. Well, 7 of these coaching vacancies, and at least 4 to 5 GM vacancies this offseason. You could argue. Again, we'll see kind of what happens, but we're already at 3. Plus a GM, and like I said, Doug Marrone's probably gone. We know Adam Gase is going to be gone. Anthony Lynn is probably going to be gone. And like I said, Doug and Howie might be gone, depending on how the end of the season finishes out. And again, if I'm going to pick one or two, I would pick Doug over Howie to stay an extra year. Because again, if Doug just hires an actual offensive coordinator, I think that would work wonders for them. Maybe let him call plays too. That would work wonders. And also again, you got to look at Chicago. Like, there's a chance Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace might be gone too. Like, there might be an unprecedented amount of head coaching vacancies and GM vacancies open this offseason. And like I said, obviously, it doesn't even include teams that are sorry, like the Cowboys. Obviously, they're not going to fire Mike McCarthy after 1 year, I don't think. Like I said, I don't think Zach Taylor is going to be gone out of a job. I don't think Matt Rule's not going to be out of a job. And obviously Shanahan's not going to be out of a job. So like I said, I think so you got Texans, Falcons, Lions, and who's the other one that's already done? Texans, Falcons, Lions. Oh, I'm so mad I don't remember this. Texans, Falcons, Lions. I guess no, those are the first 3. I'm tweaking. You got those 3. The Jaguars head coaching vacancy could be open. They got a couple first round picks. The Eagles situation could be open. Chicago could be open. As I said, that's about like 7, 8. Like I said, I don't think Cincinnati's going, and that doesn't include the Jets or the Chargers. Like I said, there's about 7, 8 head coaching vacancies that could be available coming off season. And that doesn't include the 4 or 5, maybe even 6 GM vacancies that could be open as well. We'll see what happens there. But as a legitimate shot, you could have about 7 to 8 head coaching vacancies come the offseason, which would be kind of wild when you think about it. And like I said, you would think, and that's the crazy part is that the team with the best quarterback in Deshaun Watson also has no first round picks. So again, or second round picks this year, and even I think I forget if they don't. I don't know if they have any picks next year, or is it? I think it might just be this year. So like I said, you don't really have any immediate help coming to the roster, and like I said, the cap situation isn't great. So like I said, the team with the best quarterback available also has a terrible, like I said, outlook for the future. So then that makes it difficult. Next to the Jaguars, all right, that's probably the best job because you can get Trevor Lawrence. You have a couple first round picks, things like that you can move around with. Don't have too much cap tied up. So the Jacksonville's probably the most intriguing job to me. And like I said, you could argue Philly might be the worst. It's a big market. Obviously, that's great. But like the corporate situation is a mess. Their cap situation is a mess. They have they have a team built for a Super Bowl run that isn't that good right now. So like they need to get rid of a bunch of vets making a whole lot of money. You need to like basically restart the thing. So you need to be able to convince Lurie to be like, hey, look, give me a couple of years to build this thing back up because we're going to have to tear this thing down to the bones. So, yeah, it's crazy enough that a team 3 years removed from Super Bowl might be the worst job available this offseason. You could argue. Like I said, I don't know if it's going to be true or not. Everybody's going to be different. But you could argue they may be the worst job this offseason. Like, of the vacancies open. Now, at least in terms of GM. Head coach, or whatever, you got some decent pieces on offense. But, like, from a front office standpoint, like, that job is going to be rough for us to come in and fix it, assuming Howard doesn't keep his job. If Howard keeps his job, then we're not getting any better. It's going to be a disaster moving forward. But like I said, a few jobs already open, and there will be more to come. Like I said, for all I know, Adam Gase and Anthony Lynn could be out of jobs by the time you guys hear this on Monday. And like I said, Tuesday comes, Doug Peterson could be out of a job too. Like I said, just reading the tea leaves out there. So it's interesting to kind of keep track of and pay attention to as we go forward throughout the year, or throughout the end of the season and into the off season. But yeah, that'll do it for me today on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. We want to thank you guys as always for listening to me talk about sports. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure I was on top when we drop our latest stuff. Also, if you could please as well, give us a 5-star rating, write us a nice review, wherever you your podcast at. It'd be very appreciated, very helpful. I'll see you guys like, what you guys dislike, the ways you can improve, all that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss, talk about your major takeaways from the college football and the NFL games this weekend. Talk about which head coaching vacancies or GM vacancies you think are the best currently, and also which one do you think will be opening up in the coming days, weeks, months, potentially, as the season winds down. Talk about how you feel about the COVID situation going on in sports right now. Obviously, like I said, it's getting kind of crazy out there in college football, and obviously we just saw a game with no quarterbacks in it between the Saints and the Broncos, because obviously Taysom Hill, he's not really going to get the job done. We might talk about that a little bit later, like how far the Saints could go if something were seriously to happen to Drew Brees. Because again, the 11 fractured ribs, that doesn't sound something you come back from in a couple weeks, or there's something that's 100% going to be fine the rest of the year. But that's just me. You guys forgot it's not that mobile. It's going to get hit. That's just me. So like I said, we talk about that. Talk about, obviously, there was the boxing event with Mike Tyson and Roy Jones. Obviously, Nate Robinson. I got put to sleep by Jake Paul. That was unfortunate for Nate and for the culture. He got memed. I feel bad for him. I don't know how he's going to be able to show his face in public or in his own house, because if I'm his kid, how can you respect him after you? Like, again, I feel like when you're a kid, like, you have this superhero complex for a lot of, not every parent, obviously, but in terms of they're so great, they can do nothing wrong, they're like invincible. To then see your father get knocked out, especially if he has like high school age kids, like, how do you look them in the eye the same? Or how do they look you in the eye the same? Imagine if they're bigger than him, his kids. How would they respect him? They just saw him get knocked out by a YouTuber. That'll be rough. I feel bad for Nate. But yeah, we talk about that. I said, talk about anything you guys want to talk about here, like regarding to sports or whatever. Like I said, talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. Just feel free to reach out to us. Before I get out of here, I want to make sure I shout out the essential workers. Again, they're continuing to work tirelessly throughout this pandemic to make sure everybody is as safe as we can be. So doctors, nurses, EMTs, first responders, firefighters, postal service workers, retail workers, grocery store workers, dollar store workers, like in delivery services like FedEx, UPS, Amazon, all these people that have been deemed essential. Anybody's been deemed essential. If I didn't mention you, if you've been deemed essential, shout out to you. Like I said, you're doing the work that a lot of people wouldn't do or couldn't do or don't want to do to make sure that, again, everyone is as healthy and as safe as they can be, even if you're not doing it in the safest or healthiest conditions or around people that are taking it as seriously as you are or as they should. Like I said, your work is definitely appreciated by me and by many others throughout the country, so shout out to you for that. Also, like I said, if you're still able to go out to bars and restaurants, if you're, like I said, the cities, so wherever you live hasn't really shut down too tough, or maybe COVID's not that bad where you are, tip your waiters, tip your waitresses, tip your bartenders nicely. Like I said, the service industry is going to be hit hard like many other industries have been. It's going to be hit hard this winter when things are going to have to close down due to indoor dining. Probably not going to be allowed in a lot of places because it's not really that safe when it comes to, like, unless there's a proper ventilation and things like that. Like, if there's not, it's not really as safe, even if you space things out. Like I said, I've watched too many videos and read too many articles about this. Like I said, unless you're going to update the air filtration system, it's going to be rough. Even if you kind of try to space things out. So, like I said, a lot of indoor dining may be shut down. That may cause a lot of these restaurants and businesses and stuff like that to go under, unfortunately. So, instead, while you still can, just tip those people nicely. Like I said, it'll go a long way and it'll be very appreciated. Also, wear your mask. It's not that hard to do. But yes, that'll do it for me today. I've been Chris Blades. That has been my time. And until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.